Okay, so I'm working on the exhaust system, and this is one of the exhaust tips that I got from Hard Marine. So this is the part that sticks out the back, and it's got that flange on there. These are 3-inch outer diameter exhaust tips, so they'll work with my 3-inch exhaust hose. In a future video, I'll show how this layout's going to work. And I just drilled the whole starter hole. So this is 3-inch outer diameter. You can see the flapper. It's got built-in flapper. It's this kind of style that I'm hoping will last longer. Flaps in on both sides. So I hope that lasts longer. The reason I got these straight cut ones like this that stick out a little bit in case I need to have some kind of external flapper. If these don't last good, then I can always do something on the outside. So that is that. And then this hole, what I did is I got a 2.5-inch hole saw, and I don't know if you can see, probably not on the inside. I think I used a marker. As you can see the hole, and it's smaller than I need on purpose because I held the hole saw basically flush with the transom. Well, the transom's got a little bit of curvature to it. You can see, well, I want the exhaust tips when they stick out to be parallel with the stringers, and then parallel with each other, because they're only going to be, since they're on the inside of the stringers, they're only going to be, I don't know, just a little over 20 inches apart, I think. And so I just didn't want them, if I mounted them flush to the transom, they would stick out a little bit on each side, and I didn't want that. So that means that a hole, you can't just, if you use a regular hole saw to cut it, if I were to use a 3-inch hole saw, it'd be hard to get the hole right where I needed it to be, and could always fine tune it. But that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to use my Dremel tool with the sanding drums and get it so it's this edge. It's a little hard to tell, but that edge isn't parallel with the stringers. It's a little bit angled in. So I'm gonna make sure that that's parallel with the stringers, and then of course it needs to be 3 inches in diameter. So I'll be working on that. I thought it would show how I marked where to drill the hole for this exhaust tip. Since I'm doing utility, my exhaust hose is going to run kind of right along the top of the stringer, slightly below, like the top edge of the hose would be just below the top edge of the stringer. And then I wanted to go down a little bit, as much as possible, but I couldn't have it go down too much. I know there are recommendations of, I think Glenn recommends 1/2 inch for every foot or something of slope, but with a utility like this, that's just not really practical. Because if you have it too low in the back, then this port, your exhaust, will be below the water line or into the water. I wanted it above the water line. And actually the mufflers that I have recommend, I mean, they're above waterline mufflers. Actually most mufflers for boats like this are above waterline. There are some that aren't, but anyway, the ones I've got are. And so what I wanted to do is get the center of the hole from inside, because it reference to the stringer, and then the side-to-side dimension isn't as critical. But so what I did is I clamped this level. I have 2 boards that go across top of the stringer. Oop. It's supposed to be like that. And I clamped this level, and it just so happens that the width of that level, the bottom edge of it, is right where I wanted the center of the hole to be. So then what I was able to do inside the boat is mark where that is, and then side to side I just got that based on how far I wanted it inside of this vertical board here. And I needed to remember, you got to leave enough gap for the width of the hose because you know the tip is 3 inches in diameter in my case, and then the hose, I think the hose is like 5/8 of an inch, or I forget how thick it is actually. No, not 5/8, 5/16 or something like that. And then you need a little more room for just margin and stuff. So that's how I figured out how far apart to be from this board. vertical. And then, so I was able to mark the center. And then what I did is I actually drilled a real small pilot hole from the inside out. That's how I did it. And then, like I mentioned before, I used a hole saw that was a 1/2 inch smaller than I needed. And then I used, like I said, the Dremel tool. And so, but what I did though is when I had that real small pilot hole, then from the back, everything's referenced from the inside for this first one, but then from the back, I have the center marked here. And so I was able to get I wanted just the same distance from the center. So I was able to mark the center, and then I just used my laser level. I made sure the boat was level, of course, first. And then I used my laser level to mark the second pilot hole. And then I'll use the same 2.5 inch hole saw for that side. But then to fine tune the dimensions of the height and the width, what I will do is width, I'll just measure this one and make it as close as I can to this one, both edges this way, but top and bottom I'll use my laser level and mark it. And so as I'm fine tuning that, I'll be able to get it real close to this one because I want them as close as possible. So anyway, but I did want to mention how I use that level like that clamped on top of stringers because it worked pretty good. And then also it helped me keep the center of this as I was fine tuning the hole, because this corner right here basically was the exact center of where the hole is. So I was able to kind of eyeball it. I used my tape measure, and that way I could go side to side and top to bottom, and so that worked really well. And the other thing that I did is when I was using my Dremel tool from the outside to fine tune the position of that hole, I just had my dust collection hose just sitting in right like that. And then so as I'm using Dremel tool, it was just sucking that. I didn't even have to use a respirator or anything. And so that was pretty handy. And then having this level like this from outside, what I could do is when I wanted to check to see where I was, I would just, I would just pull this level over and pull it up and then check, get in position, make sure where I was, and then I could push it over again and then pull my hose back over and just keep, it's a little blurry, keep working at it. So I've got the port side hole rough cut in here, and I was able to use the Dremel tool with the sanding drum, like I mentioned, that little thing. And I was real careful about it. Took my time and got it in there, so it's going to look great. One thing that I wanted to mention is because of the curvature of the hull, and to make it parallel with the stringers and everything, you can see I'm going to have to make a little spacer for that. So, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make that out of mahogany, or I might use some high density polyethylene black plastic, because whatever I do, I'm going to paint it black or have it be black, so, and that'll won't really show. So there we have it.